Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilove, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Welcome back to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. I have the most delightful and charming guest with me today. She has actually been on the show before. Her name is Bonnie McCune. And if you want to go back and check out the episode number 47, which is Spinning, Writing, and Lifelong Learning, because that pretty much summarizes what Bonnie does. She's a prolific writer and author, has several books out, and some incredible insights on not only writing, but exercise and life in general. So I would like to welcome Bonnie to the show. Welcome, Bonnie.
It's great to be back.
It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
And I am so glad that you're here.
I'm happy to be here, too.
So what has this past year been like for you? Because I think the last time you were here, it's been about a year.
Well, during the past year, my original publisher, not my original, my second publisher, developed a medical condition and decided to let most of her authors free. So my book at that time had only been out for less than a year, and all of a sudden I didn't have a publisher. So I had to hit the road, which is actually a fairly common phenomenon, especially if people write romances. And I knocked on doors and sent emails, and I was successful in finding another publisher to pick up the reprint rights. Mm-hmm. So that novel, which is called Never Retreat, is available again, and it was first redone in e-form, and now it's out in paperback.
And when was that? When did you write that?
I wrote that like 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one from 2018. So pretty much nothing really stops you or gets in your way.
Oh, it can't. If you're determined to be an author, or if you're determined to do anything, you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Persistence and resilience is kind of like the way to go, isn't it?
Right.
But there's so much about your personality and your life and your history that I just find really amazing. I mean, just the fact that you still do spin class, and you did tell me when you got here to the girl cave that you had a little mishap yesterday when you were jogging.
Yes, and I didn't even have an excuse of ice. I did last year. I slipped on the ice, so I had that excuse. But no, I guess my whole family is really pretty clumsy, and then of course with age you get other tweaks and twinges in your body, and I stepped the wrong way and down I went.
But it sure, once again, doesn't stop you.
No,
Because, I mean, I can't run to save my life. Well, maybe to save my life I could. But, just the last time I ran, I think, was when I was still working in the hospital in critical care and, was the resuscitation team.
Oh, you have to run there, don't you?
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the last time I did it. And that's been a really long time ago.
Well, and my husband and I went out this morning. We didn't run, but we did walk. We walked about 2.5 miles.
So I think that's another point I wanted to make because, number one, you don't stop. Nothing ever gets in your way, and you just keep going. You just get up and keep going, and you don't let some of the little mishaps, get in your way and actually side rail you.
Right. Well, I do get very depressed and discouraged at times, but for some reason, what I call my passion for writing always seems to rear up again eventually if I give it time. Mm-hmm. And I do want to make it clear that although my passion is writing, other people have other passions that serve them in the same way. And I have come to realize that it actually is a blessing for me. There was a famous novelist called Walker Percy. He wrote The Angle of Repose, but he actually was a layman Catholic theologian.
Oh, wow.
So he wrote a book called, Lost in the Cosmos. And it's the last self-help book, and it's a very small book. I read this years ago. A friend of mine told me about it, and it is so funny. It is hysterical because he makes up all these little quizzes, what you will do or what you like, and you're in outer space, and what will you do?
Oh, that's so funny.
But it has a lot of philosophy to it, too, and he maintains that we are currently in what he calls a post-religious age, because the United States doesn't have an official religion. Many people are religious, but he says we don't have an official religion, so other things take the place of that. And humans are kind of, from birth, programmed to try to figure out what they are and where they belong and what they do. So this is what I loosely define as transcendence or transcendent. And the way he says some people try to do this, and I can identify with all these too because they do give you a temporary high. Shopping. Do you know anyone who is a compulsive shopper?
Oh, yeah.
But for some reason, it doesn't keep satisfying them. They have to keep shopping and shopping. The same is true of drugs, of sex, of eating, of travel. All these things can bring you pleasure, but they aren't permanent because you have to keep going back in and doing more and more of them. Whereas if you are passionate about something, and Percy, of course, is primarily interested in science and the arts, you can figure out your place in the universe from those interests because they give you a perspective on yourself and your life and other people's life, your place in the universe. So I've broadened his definition of it because I include anything that you're passionate about. I've known people who just loved gardening. Now, I don't like all those little bugs and worms. I love the produce from the garden. But they're as passionate about gardening as I am about writing. And of course, there's people who play an instrument or believe in a cause. And I think that's another way you can get passionate.
I think sometimes people don't even realize what their passion is. And that's when I think they really, have that lost soul or they have no direction in their life. And I think that really does lead to things like, depression and anxiety.
Yep.
Because you just feel like a lost soul. Like, what is your purpose in life? But once you do find something that you are passionate about, regardless of what it is, it's one of those things that drives you and keeps you going. Even though there still are times when it's like, I think I'll just curl up in bed and pull the covers over my head for the day. That's okay too. But, we all have that experience. We all go through times like that. But you found your passion at a very young age.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I was 10 when I decided I wanted to be a writer. I don't know why. And I wrote a poem about rain rushing down the gutter, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I sent it off to the Saturday Evening Post, which at that time, well, actually it's still in existence, but then it was a weekly and it was very popular. Norman Rockwell had his paintings on the front, and they rejected it, of course. I don't know if I still have it. I should see if I can find it.
I would love to see it or hear the poem. I think that would be fantastic. So when you leave today, your job for this weekend, it's going to snow tomorrow anyway. So that can be your little project.
Okay.
Is look for that thing because I would love to hear it. Now, I think it takes a certain amount of, the only word I can think of is chutzpah.
Yeah.
For a 10-year-old to submit their first poem, written work, to not, like the local school newspaper or maybe, to the school newspaper. But no, you went right to the top.
Right to the Saturday Evening Post, yes.
Did your parents know you were doing that?
Oh, I don't know if they knew that or not.
That is just so funny.
And I kept it up. I mean, I did retain all my notebooks, and I have never dared look back at them much, but there was one poem I wrote when I was in college, and it starts out, "The world is the color of vomit to me." So that was my angst period.
I remember you telling me that. I do remember that one. It's so funny. I have one of my nieces who's a senior in college now. I think she's a senior. Bad aunt. But at Kent State. And so she is getting a major in English and creative writing too. And she is just an amazing writer, but a lot of it is a little dark.
Yes.
And so I guess, that's the college days or whatever. I don't know.
But what a college to go to. A college with such a tremendous dark history. I mean, that's in my head. It's just engraved in my head because I was about college age at that time. And I remember the photos and the sense of horror and shock.
And see, I was kind of young enough to be so self-centered. Everything was all about me. So I must have been, 13, because they just celebrated the 50th anniversary. So, I wasn't paying that much attention, but I knew how upset everybody was. And my oldest sister was in high school at the time. So 3 years later, when she was going to college, one of her closest friends went to Kent State. And, my parents were horrified. Everybody was horrified. And, but she went anyway and got a really good education.
Well, it was no different from any other school, actually. One thing that really stopped me in my tracks was the realization that those students were shot and killed by people the same age as they, who were probably terrified themselves. Right. So you have people on opposite sides of some issue who run into these things. And
the end result was that they were both horribly traumatized.
Yep.
The families of the victims who were injured but survived, and then the ones who were pulling the trigger as well.
Yep.
And I can't remember, I was having this delightful conversation. It was at the doctor's office yesterday. And I usually hate doctors, and I hate to go to the doctor, but I've been having this throat issue, and this ENT was the most interesting person, and he was just so engaging. And I don't remember how he was talking about doing like my heritage, the DNA, and finding his results, and how there was they were interviewing somebody on a show one time who was like a really extreme person who hated like this other tribe or whatever, and then he did his DNA and found out he was part of the tribe.
He was part of it.
And it's like, well, it just goes to show that we really are all one and the same. And of course we think differently, thank God, and we have different interests and different beliefs, and that's fine. That's wonderful. That's what makes us unique. And to be able to talk to each other and share our own personal experiences, our visions, whatever, our ideas, as crazy as they might be, or as bland as maybe they might be, it's all good. It's all good. We're all people.
Yep.
I know.
I wish we'd step back from the violence, though. There's no repairing.
No, that's something that lasts forever, as far as in the minds of the people who've experienced it, and even the people who have just stood back on the sidelines and saw it in the news and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Yep.
So, all right. So one thing we need to get out of this podcast or this episode is let's all just get along.
Which is kind of a joke, but in the middle of an intense discussion, you go, "Why can't we all just get along?"
It just reminds me of that, or the scene in Miss Congeniality, and I love that movie when she said, "And I really do want world peace." So one of these days, but humanity, I tell you. Anyway, so another thing that I find about you that's very interesting is that you are a minimalist, a self-proclaimed minimalist.
And I didn't even know I was. I think that I overheard something on the news a couple of years ago in the back of my mind, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's what I am, a minimalist.
So how long ago was it that you made that discovery?
Not too long ago, a year or two ago. But I have been a minimalist because I'm also an environmentalist since I was a kid. And maybe that was my father who always said, don't waste anything. Use this over. Can we make something out of that? And then kind of it wraps into this whole Walker Percy's thing, because if you don't get permanent satisfaction from buying things or doing particular kinds of things, why bother doing them? Yeah.
You've always been very involved in community service.
Yes, I have, because that's kind of a passion too. When I left college, right after college, I did work for a law firm just because, I was willing to do anything, although that was a great experience. And then when I had my kids and then went back to work, I wound up working at an environmental coalition. But ever since then, I have always been involved with the community, either as a volunteer or a staff member, because I do feel that's another thing that I believe in. If we're here all together and facing the same kinds of problems, why don't we help each other out?
Exactly. And that's one of the things, that's one of the goals of the show, is to be able to provide like a platform or resources, that there are a lot of things out there that we can help each other, we can work together, we can share each other's stories, or hey, this worked for me or this didn't work. So it's just trying to open up the lines of communication, which would, to me, just would benefit everybody and anybody. So as long as we just stay engaged with each other, I think magic can happen.
Well, and I took retirement about 10 years ago, and I found myself getting more depressed and more frustrated, and part of it was lack of seeing humans and being involved in stuff. And it isn't, if you're new to the area of nonprofits or volunteering, some people get very discouraged with it because it does take a certain skill, the right kinds of people around you to finally fit in. And so if somebody is volunteering and it doesn't feel right and you're not getting out of it what you want, I'd first of all suggest asking the person who's kind of your supervisor and then moving on. I mean, I started volunteering at about 3 or 4 other places that I finally have dropped. Part of that's because I'm my age and I kind of know what I want. But there's no shame in saying, oh, this isn't working for either of us. So now I volunteer once a month at the Park Hill Community Bookshop, which is a nonprofit totally run by volunteers.
Nice.
And I volunteer with a book club. Lots of people do that. And now I can't think of anything else I do. But I do a couple other nonprofit things.
Well, you do a lot, yeah, because I remember looking at your CV or, when the last time you were here, and it's quite impressive. But one of the things that you said a little while ago that I didn't want to interrupt, but I just had to laugh when you said that when you finished college, you went to work for a law firm, and it was the way you said it that was like, I was willing to take anything. I would even work in a law firm.
Well, I was actually lucky. Probably lucky I didn't have to be a waitress because I had been a waitress all through school. And I fell into the best situation because my boss there was wonderful. And in the main, I have been very fortunate with my bosses because they've trusted me. They've given me responsibility and authority and were willing to teach me. So I'm sure Mr. Nelson is not listening to this because he was older than I. But he was great. In fact, my husband and I went to Europe for about 6 months and came back. And I was pregnant. And Mr. Nelson tried to get me to go back to San Francisco and work for him. I said, well, who'd take care of my baby? So I never did do that. But he was great. And by and large, I've had wonderful bosses, and I've learned so much from them.
Well, I think it might even be that you made good choices in presenting yourself to, at the job interview or whatever. So I think that had a lot to do with it too, just with your energy and the way you approach things. Even, the first time I met you was a little over a year ago up in Georgetown at the Christmas market, the Book Nook. You ran the room. And I mean that in the best possible way. It was just like some people just kind of sit back and just don't even engage with other authors and, wait for people to approach them. You were all over the place.
But I only sold 1 book.
Well, that's okay.
Well, that's funny you say that because after I had my kids and then I was looking for a job, I interviewed everywhere for anything. So I went into one. I don't know who he was. I do know he was a psychologist. And I went in and he asked me questions and we did this and that. And at the end he said, now I think we should talk about how this interview went. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. He said, well, I think that you are funny and interesting, but I don't know how smart you are. So I knew I wasn't going to fit in with him.
How did you respond to that?
I can't even remember. I was just so shocked. I was like, well, thank you for the interview.
And then, thank you for the feedback.
Yes.
I'll get my dumb self out of here.
And then I went, and this was not at the same time, or oh my God, I would have just gone home and never come out again. Another time I was in an interview for a job, and it was a group interview, and one of the people fell asleep during my interview. Those are small hints that you're not going to fit in.
So now I go back to my original point, was that the way you presented yourself to those people that you were interviewing with and the interaction was probably why you had so much success with your bosses. I would imagine that, had they hired you, either the psychologist or the one with narcolepsy, that might not have worked out so well.
Yes, I probably would have been long gone.
Oh, that is just too funny. So I do remember this from before, that there was a time in your marriage where you were working and your husband stayed home with the kids.
That's right. I mean, we decided that too as soon as we got married. And it's so funny to hear people talking now about, equality in the home and stuff. Because my husband and I always were like that. We were first going to switch off every year, because at that time he was trying to write too. And then we realized, well, nobody would hire you just for a year. So it eventually turned into 5-year stints. And we had, I think, 3 or 4 of those.
He's a writer, or he's interested in writing. So what was your degree in when you went to college? And what was his in? I mean, did you have backgrounds in writing, except for you were passionate and was, trying to get a job at the Post?
I majored in psychology.
Okay.
And I almost had a double major in sociology and psychology. But I took a lot of English classes. Okay. And he did major in English.
And so what did he do when he was working? Was he a teacher? Or?
No, he worked at some bureaucratic job for the state.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, he's not as practical as I am. Or maybe he's more practical.
Well, I would think that you'd get a good pension from that.
Yes.
So, segueing on, especially this is really interesting because of your background in psychology.
Yes.
And especially your experience with that psychologist who didn't hire you, thank goodness. We also were talking about, you have a fantastic blog. And so for my listeners, do check out Bonnie's website. I'll have the links on the podcast so you can go and check that out. And look at her blog because she has a really interesting way of looking at things, as you probably could tell from our conversation. But she just did one, I think it was in January. What happens if you're forced to be happy all the time?
Yes. I get many questions from life, and so this one occurred to me because I was in a Zumba class, I won't say where, and I realized that something really irked me about the teacher, and I finally decided it was because she was happy all the time. Not only that, she wanted everybody in the class to be happy all the time. Ugh. And on top of that, you had to express it a certain way. So you were supposed to scream and yell and smile and laugh. And I just, I'm sorry, I'm just not, first of all, I'm not happy all the time. And secondly, I like to maintain a little distance from people. And that's probably my age and how I was raised. But I don't meet people and suddenly run up and throw my arms around them. So I finally decided there is something wrong, too, in a society that demands you should be happy and outgoing all the time. Not everybody is.
What do the introverts do?
Yes, and there's a whole book. I haven't read it, but there's a book about that. If you're an introvert, you're just... different people have different talents, different skills, and different interests. And that's part of the balance of life. So... just because I don't like to scream and run around the gym and high-five people doesn't mean that I'm not interested in exercising. And I see this a lot, too, in restaurants. And I think the management wants everybody to feel good about being there, so they tell the staff to just always be, well, how are you? I was in a restaurant yesterday with a friend, and this young woman walked out. How are you? It's so good to see you today. And I looked at her and I said, do I know you? I thought maybe it was somebody I'd forgotten who she was. But she was a staff person. I mean, and she was perfectly congenial.
Yeah.
And she didn't try to throw her arms around me, thank God. But that seems to be more and more in our society how you're urged to be. And not everybody is comfortable with that. And neither is it good to be hysterically happy all the time. How do you determine when you're not feeling well? When you're depressed? I mean, do you feel guilty because you're depressed?
Well, and that was going to be my question with all of this happiness and all of this, elusive, or not elusive, that's not the word, but this just exuberance.
Right.
Could it be medication?
Or could they need medication? I don't know, but...
That's one nice thing about being in ballet class. We're not always happy.
Yes, and ballet is so structured. That's what I don't take it now, but I did for a while, and I loved it because it was so structured.
I like the structure, and I like the discipline.
Yes.
But you still have that nice port-a-bras. I saw your arms moving there. That was pretty good. But I want to... Would you be comfortable sharing with the audience how young you are?
Sure, I'm 75.
Okay, so you're 75 and you're talking here Zumba, jogging, spinning. You do all of those things. That is just amazing.
Well, we have, and I have to credit my husband because he drags me out, There are times when I don't feel like it, but he actually says that I started him in, because when we were married, I would say, now we've got to do this and we've got to do that. But he keeps me going. And we bicycle outside. I mean, the years do take their toll. You're not... First of all, when you fall down, you don't recover as well. Yeah. But if you expect... And people are always like, how happy are you? There are essays up the yin-yang about, am I happy enough? How can I be happier?
If you have to ask that question, something's wrong. And
I don't think that's the point of life. It's not to be happy, because most people define happiness in that very, I don't want to say shallow or frustrating way, but the same ways that Percy said, you're not going to be permanently satisfied. You're constantly chasing some kind of high. Right. Maybe that's why people take as many drugs as they do. I don't know.
It could be.
And you have to have a balance, or else how do you know when you are happy?
Well, and you don't want to be inappropriately happy because life is full of hits.
Oh, it is.
You get, especially once you get to be a certain age, man. You do not get through this roller coaster ride without a significant amount of hits, and they come in so many different forms and so many different ways. And to be perpetually happy and giggling through all of it is just not normal.
And I remember years ago there at work, someone had lost a friend who also had worked there, and she was in the hall, and she started crying, and she said, oh, sorry. I said, what are you sorry for? Yeah. What's the use of being alive if you can't cry over somebody dear to you that you've lost? There is no reason to apologize.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that we're told, I don't know, it's really weird. Like when I was growing up, a lot of times we were kind of like had to stuff our feelings or whatever. Yes. And now it's almost the opposite end of the spectrum that, you share your feelings with everybody. And I don't think either extreme is all that good because I'm a lot like you. I just I'm going to keep my distance for a while until I feel comfortable with you. And, once I have that comfort level or not, I'll engage with the person or I'll just, kind of walk away. But I have to tell you, this one story is really funny when you're talking about, your instructors. And this was a long time ago. It was probably 20 years ago. It was right when Bikram became popular around here.
Oh, yeah. And that's the one that's so hot, isn't it?
Yes. So I was, talked into, you should try it. So I went one Sunday afternoon to try a Bikram class, Bikram yoga. And the little woman who was teaching the class, she was really charming and adorable. She was little, she was plump, she was older, and she came running at me and gave me a great big bear hug, and I thought, have we met before? And she was so tiny, so little and short. I mean, her head was like right at my chest level. It was just really, really weird. So then I went into the Bikram class, and I mean, as soon as the heat hit me, it was like, whoa. And somebody looked and says, oh, is this your first time? Don't worry, you'll get used to it. And I thought, I don't think so. I'm afraid I'm going to throw up. And my hair color faded like 3 shades that day. I was sweating hair color.
Oh my gosh.
And then when I left the class, and this, the instructor came up to me and she actually kissed me. Kissed me on the cheek and thanked me for coming, and it's so lovely to meet you, and I can't wait to see you next week. And I thought, I'm going to stay home Sunday afternoons. But it was just really interesting.
I wonder if they're told that is the way to reinforce a tie with their students or
Maybe.
something.
I don't know, but it was just really bizarre. Again, I'm from the ballet world where we just, step away from the toe shoes. Just give me some space. So is there anything else you would like to share with us today, Bonnie?
Well, I'd like to share about my book, Never Retreat, but you're putting up links on that.
Mm-hmm. So just give us a little rundown what the book is about.
Oh, okay. The book is set in Colorado. I set all my books in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I guess because it's easier. Then I don't have to come up with something new.
Well, the mountain mystique is really
yes.
great. You can't beat that.
And a woman in her 30s who is a single mother is working, strangely enough, in the law office of a big tech firm. So I still pull on my own background. And she gets a chance to go to the management retreat up in the mountains, and there, of course, since it's a romance, is a man in it, and she before she even knows him, decides she doesn't like him because he's a motorcyclist, and it turns out her son's father was a motorcyclist, and he's ex-military, and he's just too charming. So she decides he's got to be a phony. So he likes her immediately, and to me that was kind of the interesting thing to twist in the story, to make him be really a decent guy and have her have to learn how to open herself up and make herself vulnerable again. So they get caught in a storm, and there's a flash flood, and they have to rescue people. Yeah.
Well, you have a couple of other ones. There was one, I can't remember the title right now, that just looked like it was really intriguing, and I think it might have been one of your first books. I can't remember the name right now. But you can go to Bonnie's website and check it out.
Yeah, I have catastrophes in all of them, and I didn't realize that till this last book, because I have a forest fire in one, I have winter storms in a couple of them. Oh,
because you know those pretty well. Yeah, we know those here. There's one, so if I can give you a suggestion, as you were talking, and I just started, again, laughing inside my own head, is I think you should do one about, maybe a mountain psychologist or a psychologist, in the middle of Denver, something like that, and come up with that based on your experience of the interview that you had with that psychologist with the dog, or the dog interview. I mean, you can still, after all these years, be pulling on that experience, and you could have a lot of fun with it.
I couldn't believe that a psychologist would be stupid enough to say something like that.
Stupid enough to say, I don't think you're that smart.
Yeah. Especially since right before then he had asked me what my grade point average had been, and I went to college to party. I'm sorry, I did not go to college.
I hear you. It's okay. Yeah, my GPA was okay, but in graduate school it was really high.
Oh, okay.
But and my parents would say, "Well, that's because you're paying for it this time," and I'm like, "No, it's just this is a whole lot more interesting than some of the other stuff," and I already got the partying out of my system by that time. So, well, Bonnie, now the name of your blog is
Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives, and I came up with that because I was thinking about the people that I know that I most admire, and they're usually people that nobody else even notices. Wow. But they have struggled, just like we were talking before. They struggled so hard to build a life and maintain themselves in the face sometimes of really, poverty,
Wow.
poverty or bad choices with mates or
illness. Or,
all kinds of stuff. And they still battle on.
It really, truly amazes me how many, because I talk to a lot of people, of course, and it amazes me. Every person I talk to is so fascinating, and they have such an incredible story. And when I hear their stories, it's like, wow, I can't believe you did that. Wow, that's so amazing. And they'll say, really? I don't think so. But when we live the life, we see it from a different perspective. It's like, well, that is my normal. And, I don't think look at those belts. I don't think that's that extraordinary, except every now and again it's like, did I really do that? You just keep going. And I think that's the key, is just to not let some of life's hits knock you down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, then if you listen to interviews with people who are called heroes, almost everyone says, I'm not a hero. I'm just a person who did what had to be done.
And I believe there is that spirit of generosity and responsibility and caring for other people in everyone, or at least most everyone. And people want to help each other out, and they want to be interactive and engaging. So let's all remember that as we're going through this election season. So anyway, Bonnie, thank you so much for being here. I just really love talking to you. I love having you on the show, and hopefully you can come back again and tell us what you're up to, because you are always up to something.
Well, maybe I can get another novel out, and then you can invite me back again.
I'll invite you back even without a novel.
Okay.
Okay.
And this has been great.
It's been a
so
lot
much.
of fun. Oh, you're welcome. Like I said, I just love having you here. It's just wonderful. So for my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And just remember to be nice to your fellow human beings. Find balance in your life. Find your passion. Follow it. And if you don't want to be happy sometimes, you really don't have to be.
That's right.
And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.